All right, I wanted to start off our study sessions and my personal videos with kind of discussing, if you will, each founding document that you're going to need to know for the examination moving forward. Now, just to let you know, heads up, I'm not going to take really long on these. I'll just kind of go over the summary of them, the main points that you need to know. But at the very end, when I said here, the additional documents that I have here with the Federalist 10 Brutus 1 analytical reading, that is going to be attached to this message. And then if you go to AP Classroom, I think I like pinpointed like, I don't know, like 6 multiple choice questions that deal with Federalist number 10. So it shows you exactly the information that's going to be used on the exam. All right, couple of key points here. So in Federalist number 10, written by James Madison, part of the Federalist Papers, just over in general right here, Federalist Papers intended to convince people to ratify the Constitution. And one of the things that it does is not only discuss certain portions of the Constitution, but then also talk about why the Constitution is a good idea. So, Federalist number 10 is in that vein right there. Now, it first opens up with a discussion of a participatory, pure, direct democracy. So, if you don't know what that means that it's a democracy, and they all mean the same stuff, by the way. It's just 3 different ways to say the same thing. So, participatory or pure or direct democracy is like everybody participates in every single facet of the government, or everybody is directly part of all rules, responsibilities, debates, and voting, and so on as well. Now, the perception that Madison says about that kind of government is that, people believe that everybody has an equal say and each voice is equal, no one dominates. But the truth is, what we'll talk about is the reality here is that this type of government suffers factions, all right? And factions dominate in this kind of government. Now, factions, real quick defined, it's a group of like-minded people tied together with a singular goal. So today, what we would say a faction is could be a political party. It could be an interest group as well, but they are tied together by one interest, if you will, or one goal that they have achieved. Now, why they could be trouble, and I've listed them down here, is this is a faction doesn't necessarily join together because they're interested in justice. And they really could care less about minority beliefs. It's all about what the faction wants. All right? So justice is secondary, and minority beliefs are also secondary too. It's all about what the majority wants. Now, I could use a bunch of different examples, and I cringe as I'm doing this, but a classic example of this would be like the movie Footloose, where you've got young kids that want to hold a high school prom dance. And in town, there's a group of like minded people joined together by a common goal of there should be no absolute dances. So, despite the fact that Ren goes to the town hall and discusses passionately why the kids should be able to dance, and there's a whole bunch of kids and they're behind this movement, the faction still dominates at the end of the movie. I mean, the kids have to actually go outside city limits to actually have their prom. So that's exactly what we would say is like those people in town, they could care less that justice was not, part of their belief of the no dance policy. And, Ren and his friends and fellow high school students, well, sorry, but, it's all about us. It's not about you. So honestly, that's what can happen. The minority can be shut down. Factions are really really loud in small participatory governments. Now, they are inevitable, as we discussed, like one of the first days of school, that humans are political animals. So we like to be together. We like to join together. We do our best work together, as we've always said that. So if we're gonna be together and factions are inevitable, we're always gonna join together in groups. Then how can we control them? Well, he outlines a couple of different ways. Well, he says you can eliminate their cause, which means this: you would have to take away liberty. You would have to get rid of freedom of speech. Do not let them talk about their causes. Do not let them share their passions openly, okay? Or get rid of freedom of assembly. They can't join together to discuss their causes and their issues and so on as well. So you could do that, but we don't want to do that because you're crushing liberty, and this is not what we're trying to do. We want people to have liberties. Now, he also says you could give everybody the same thoughts. That's just impossible, and I think that's common sense. No matter how hard you try, there's no way that you can convince everybody to think exactly the same at all points of time. So, okay, they're inevitable. Now, looking throughout history, The most common source of factions. Why are they joining together? It's the unequal distribution of wealth. So there are those that have things and those that do not. Now, this is a theme that has continued to live on, I said, for a long time. So you see it today in America's taxation system, where if you make a lot of money, it's expected that you pay a higher rate in taxes, if you will. And then sometimes we see this with taxes and assets are taken from the rich and given to the poor. And we see that that's redistributive policies that we see in place today. So it still lives on today. So if they're going to live, and this is what we're probably going to deal with moving forward, then what can we do? What can we do? Well, you always have those people that say, hey, well, wait a minute. Back in my participatory direct democracy, we had enlightened statesmen, people that cared about the bigger goals, just not themselves. And what Madison will say there is, yeah, hey, actually, that's, hey, wonderful, great idea. But what happens when they go away? What happens when enlightenment statesmen retire or they die? Who replaces them? And probably who's going to replace them is somebody from a faction who doesn't necessarily care about the bigger picture. They care about what the group wants. So there it is. So how do we control them? Well, we can control them by creating a large republic form of government. And as I've always told you, you're going to remember multiple different things on this test, but rep and republic stands for represent. So a republic government would be, you're not going to go to Washington, D.C. every day to participate on all points of democracy. You're going to represent someone to do that for you. All right? Now, in regards to a small or large republic, we want a large republic. That's what Madison says. And he says, here's why. Listen, number one, it's going to be difficult for a faction to manipulate other people around the United States. Now, here's what I mean. If Illinois was dominated by one particular faction, like just a group of like-minded people that were banded together and they had control of power and they did what they want, well, that faction gets to send one person to Washington, and that one person has to work with 49 other people from 49 different states. And so that one person can't consistently win out every battle. If they want to get things done in Washington, they have to meet with other people that have different ideas and different goals, and they have to compromise, if you will, with them to get things done. So a large republic will force factions to compete. And the more people, more competition, and the more competition, better policy. And then he also says something here with a large republic too is, you're going to avoid like malicious people or shady people because the Constitution illustrates that we're going to have a federal election every 2 years. So every 2 years, at least if that person's in the House, that person's going to have to run for election and pretty much validate why they should continue to be there. And if people catch on to their manipulative ways, well, they're gone. All right. So there's one thing, and I'll end with this, and I think it discusses, more importantly, better than I could with why a large republic. Madison says the influence of factious leaders may kindle a flame within a particular state. So the influence of a faction may be particularly strong in states. That's that small group, all right? But will be unable to spread a general conflagration through the other states. And that means, just as we talked before, is there. Just because your ideas are popular in your state and you're top dog there, doesn't mean that those ideas are going to be popular in other states as well. All right? If you want them to, you're going to have to compete and convince and kind of work with others to get those things achieved. So that's kind of my gist. That's what I wanted to get with Federalist number 10. I'll post a Brutus number 1 shortly after this and go from there. But don't forget, I'm going to attach the analytical reading. You've already done this. Hopefully you've held on to the paper so you can look at the highlights of it. And don't forget AP Classroom questions. They are not for a grade by any means, but they're just an idea and a way for you to review. So, all right, until next time, we will see you. I hope things are going well.